Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Six Rings King Show on a new night, Monday night now, baby. We're really excited, actually, to have Eric McLean on the show here, college football analyst, co-host of The Huddle. Coach, yes! All right!
First touchdown of the year.
Miami Hurricanes, yeah. You know the name already. It's Mercy. Ha ha. It's a six-ring Kane show. Can't forget the name though. Got Jazz, Blue, Vision, DJ, break the game code. Ain't no changing them, ain't no breaking them. We reporting live from the Hard Rock Stadium. Ball 14 for the orange and green. You see the six-ring champs. It's more than a dream. This is life on the field. Beyond 100 yards of hurricane that's never still put a damage to your squad.
What's wrong with us? Seriously.
What's wrong with us? We're Miami Hurricanes fans.
Welcome to the Six Rings Kane Show, a show dedicated to Miami Hurricane sports, featuring the legendary Larry Bluestein, Jazz Santana, Vish, and Danny Gillette. Let's go Canes.
And I already see the smile on your face.
I'm reading the comments. It's going to be a fun show, man. It's going to be a fun show.
Hold on a second. I haven't even read them. Jesus Christ.
This is a topic people have strong opinions on, and I don't think they align to ours, so this should be interesting.
Ooh, I love it. Look at all this stuff.
People are fired up. It's good.
I love it.
It's good if they're not. It's much worse if they're not fired up. I'll say that. That means they've given
up. We're talking about taking the Ron Frazier statue down and everything. Yeah, this is gonna be a good one, man.
Yeah, we got some fired up people in the comments. Oh.
Yeah, we do. Welcome to the Canes baseball special. As obviously big news just popped off today, and JD Arteaga has been named officially the 10th head baseball coach at the University of Miami. Obviously, I'll run down a couple of things from him, and I'm gonna let Vish go at it for a little bit too, because I've got some stuff also. But 21 seasons with the program as a pitching coach, started in 2003 as he took over, and I think it was the 9th game of the season that year with when 3 was at the helm. For you baseball aficionados who don't know who 3 is, that's Coach Jim Morris, and of course one of the if not the greatest pitcher of all time here at the University of Miami as well. One of the only guys whose jersey is retired. So, obviously a lot of great accolades from JD and what he's done for this program. But as no surprise, not a very popular option as the next head coach of the team. Obviously, Gino DeMari stepping down a few weeks ago. And, maybe a lot of people were thinking, well, if we were going to name JD the head coach, why not just do it right then and there? You got the guy already in the locker room. Why not just go ahead and name him right then and there? I think it's a lot more than just that. And we're probably going to talk about what it does for this program. We're going to talk about what the comments are saying. What a lot of people.
Yeah, just some sampling of the comments. Laziest hire in the history of UM. I know a lot of you listen to the audio podcast, so I'll read them out.
I do love his name though, Jack Marriott's. What is it? Oh man, that was one of my favorites.
Jack Marriott's
Theratrix.
Now our man hopped in here when I created the stream and dropped this comment. He was fired up at 12:15, so I don't know if he's still here. So, but that
I like
Smash Bro, who's been a frequent chatter on our baseball program, said the job wasn't a popular one. Too many things against the program. No different than giving Jamari the position. We'll address some of this in a second. And then, the program's in bad shape. Coach really will never go to Omaha again. That might be a little extreme.
I think a lot of them are.
Lazy hire. So thought on having 3 rookie coaches. I think we need a veteran coach to help these guys out. I think we're talking probably about the staff maybe.
Well, number one, JD Arteaga is not a rookie coach.
Well, I mean, I think it's his first time as a head coach, but
I
yeah,
got you.
he's
And by the way, no, some of the other guys that are going to be assistants potentially are head coaches now. So yeah,
well. I mean, we got to see how that plays out. I will
right.
say,
I don't
kind
want
of
to
the one,
speculate on that, but there's
yeah,
that.
the one through line I've seen that this is a so. I mean, we'll just say this is a name we've heard rumored, but we just basically on this show, and this goes for our football, baseball, and basketball coverage until things are confirmed. We really don't like to speculate on it. Other shows do that. We kind of wait for it to be official. We've been burned before, so
Yes, we have.
yeah.
So
Yes, those are the names. Those are the names we heard, though. Adrian Morales and Las Gutierrez. We've seen those names thrown around, but we don't have any confirmation on that. But I will say the overrunning lying premise we're seeing in the comments and that I've seen on Twitter is that I feel like the way the disconnect is, and I came out after the season ended and said I didn't think Gino needed to go, and I feel like you and I are probably two of the few people not freaking out entirely. And I think from my standpoint, the reason and this comment about calling it Manny Diaz all over again, the reason I disagree with that, other than he is right, it's technically someone with no head coaching experience. But I think the difference here is, and I think where the disconnect is I don't understand what program people have been watching. We are not that far away from where we need to be. Finishing in the top 10 the last 2 years is not.
Well, let's just put it out there, right? Based off of what everybody is talking about, this team is in shambles. It's in disarray. It's a dumpster fire, and we've had a losing record for the past 20 years. That's the feeling you get,
right? And I think there's been a lot of comparisons to football. And while football and baseball both last won a championship in 2001, baseball has been much more successful in that period of time, and and is in much better shape right now. So I think so I think that comparison falls apart. I know we like to compare it to football. This is nothing like what we've done in football. That doesn't mean it's going to work, by the way. It just means that this is not, when you're saying like this is like Randy Shannon or this is like Manny Diaz, it's nothing like that. Those programs were not healthy when we promoted the assistant. And as much as that loss to Texas hurt, we were in a situation where we were the number 9 team in the country. Following year, where we were the number 6 team in the country. That is a very different story than, by the way, than one we've ever done with football in the last 20 years. Not even once that good. And it's also very much better than what Gino DiMari took over, which was a program that missed the NCAA tournament twice. Now, does that mean that JD's necessarily the right hire? No, but I think if you have to address it on the merits and not on this fiction that this program has been in the toilet for 20 years, has not done anything, and therefore we need to implode the whole thing. Because I think that part of it is where I think I have a lot of dispute. And Jazz, I'll let you respond to that while we bring in our esteemed guest here. Or do you want to give that a whirl on what I just said? You want me to go ahead and bring in our man here? You're on mute. You're on mute, dude.
Replacing Norberto.
Norberto went up to UCF apparently. Right?
Yeah,
that's what Kendall Rogers reported. So
he did. Look, I'll kind of echo the sentiment on the majority of the fan base kind of looking at this program and saying, "Oh no, this program is in shambles. What are we gonna do? It's a dumpster fire." Here we go, making a lazy hire and hiring JT Arteaga. Oh no, we're never going to go to Omaha again. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Look, taking a step back and not knee-jerking, yes, the regional sucked, right? We lost to a Texas team that we could have potentially beat. We didn't perform the way we should have in regionals. That's a given. That's understandable. I get that. And then last year, same thing happened, right? With Ole Miss and Arizona and all that stuff. But I think that what we failed to recognize is the success that this program has had in the past 20 years, regardless of whether they've won a national championship or not. You're talking about a team that's been to Omaha what is it, 6 times in the last 18 years. And by the way, JD Arteaga was part of those teams, right? We're talking about a team that I know this is all, here, oh, well, it could have happened. It could have been this. It could have been that. But if it wasn't for COVID, that's an Omaha team in 2020, right? Or 2020? Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly gets out of at least the regional to take that talking point away.
Right. You got to have certain things fall in place. Perfect example. Look at what happened to Wake Forest with the best pitching in the world, the best analysts in the world, everything. The best pitching in college baseball, the number 1 team in the country, and they kind of ran out of arms. They kind of ran out of mojo. LSU got hot. Obviously, one of the best teams in the country as well. But, these type of things are going to happen. I get it. This is Omaha. It happened in Omaha. It's happened in Miami and Omaha. It's happened in Miami and Supers. It's happened in Miami and Regionals. It's happened to Vanderbilt. It's happened to Florida. It's happened to this. You can name every single team that is at the same level as Miami baseball. It's happened to all of them. And so if we're going to sit here, we're going to say that, oh, no, it's going to be Gino DiMario all over again. Well, correct me if I'm mistaken here, Vish, but 2 years prior to Gino taking over, the last 2 years with 3, we didn't even make a postseason run, right?
We missed the regional for the first 2 times in 40 years. Yeah, and I mean, one of them was a screw job. They did it on purpose to end our streak, and it was complete crap. We were like, I think they put up the stat during one of the games this year that because they were showing someone else's resume, and they're like, only 1 out of 60 teams with this resume has not made the tournament. It's like 2017 Miami, so it felt intentional. But the program was definitely not doing well, and I will say this, just to talk about where Gino started to where he left. He did not get the job done. I think we need to make that clear, right? But we're talking about he took it from missing the NCAA tournament to top 10. Now the next step is actually much harder. How do you get from 10 to 1? Right. That, like you said, takes luck.
Bring him on.
It takes luck. It takes a lot of things to do that. And so there's a lot that goes into that. The other thing I will say, this is something we talked about it earlier today, which is people turn on the postseason, we lose the regionals, therefore we suck.
Well, that's the problem. You know what? I want to bring it.
Yeah, let's bring our boy Baxton here.
This is perfect.
What's up, man?
Hello, let me get closer.
What's up, man?
I have to preface by saying this is red. Okay. It's not.
I mean, you're looking very. There's a game going on right now, and you're looking very much like you're supporting one of the 2 teams in that game. We can't.
LSU is doing the Lord's work right now, so we're okay.
Yeah, they got 2 on with 2 out here. Let's see if they can extend that lead here.
Absolutely not.
All right, so Max, it's funny though because Kane's cat he just kind of mentioned this, right? Like as soon as all the football fans, stop crying about football for a while, then all of a sudden they turn on baseball and they're like, oh no, they're losing to Texas. Oh no, they lost in the ACC tournament to Clemson in the final. That kind of stuff, right? You start tuning in and all of a sudden they're losing in playoffs. And so they think, oh no, it's another team that's doing the same thing again. And that's the problem, right? And look, I don't have a problem with the fan base. Most, I don't know what the percentage is, are football fans. Great. And a lot of them watch baseball or pay attention to it in the postseason. A lot of people do that. I get that. But for some of us that watch it all year round and that go to fall practices and watch them play summer and watch these kids do what they do throughout the whole year, you see the type of program this has been in the past 20 years after 2021, and you can't sit here and say this team is a dumpster fire. They're making lazy hires with JD. Look, it might not be a popular one, right? And you start to think, well, why didn't they just announce it 2 weeks ago when Gino stepped down? Well, hey, there's a lot that goes into this, right? And you can probably get into it if you want to, but the fact of the matter is this is a great program. And I saw someone write saying that this was a very unpopular coaching job. And if you hear the names that were interviewed, we're going to be interviewed. There's SEC coaches that wanted to be interviewed that didn't even get. This is by no means an unpopular job. Someone mentioned this is a top 2 or 3 program in college baseball. We are the blue bloods of college baseball. We are the Dukes. We are the Kentucky, the North Carolina of college baseball. We are the USCs, the Notre Dames, the Alabamas of college football. We're still up there in college football, but I'm saying in baseball, that's who we are. So there's no chance in hell that a Walter or I don't know, God forbid, not God forbid actually, but O'Sullivan or any of these guys that are coaching, Jay Johnson are coaching right now. If the Miami position opens up and they got an opportunity, someone's going to go out there and try to get that job. Just happened to be that JD was the best option. And I truly feel that based off of everything, you got to put it all into perspective. It's not just about the coaching. And it is, okay, it is. And he's actually done a hell of a job coaching. But let's talk about the relationships. Let's talk about what he can do outside of the field, which is recruiting. And we're going to get into recruiting as well, because a lot of people think that we don't recruit very well. And we're going to go down that recruiting line, and we're going to compare it to LSU and Florida as well, so you guys can see how well we do recruit. But what I'm trying to say is this is a really good program right now. The state of the program is actually really healthy. Yes, there is going to be turnover. There is going to be a lot of different players. It's a transfer portal. That's what every school is gonna encounter. You just saw Cesari and Corona enter the transfer portal today for Wake Forest. Two guys that started on that team, the number one team in the country. So let's take things into perspective. What are your thoughts on this, Max?
Yeah, I mean, relationships are super, super important, especially in baseball. I feel like it's one of those sports, like specifically, that you need ties to a region most of the time when you're getting, you're hiring a coach. I'm indifferent about the hire in general. Like, I'm not for or against it. I really just kind of took emotions out of it, and I'm just going to have a wait and see. But I think it is really important that you have a lot of the players on the team advocating for him to get the job. You have a lot of the former players and alumni advocating for him to get the job. And, people say, oh, it's just a good old boys club. But I think they really think that he can do a good job. And so I'm in a wait and see approach. I think, like you mentioned, we'll get into recruiting a little bit here shortly. JD's been a phenomenal recruiter over the years. I think there's some, I guess, negatives you could say in recruiting that we can touch base on as well. But
it's too good recruiting, right? Recruiting has been too good.
Yeah,
sometimes,
exactly. Right? But like I said, I'm kind of indifferent on the hire at this point.
The one thing I would add to that is, again, I think it's important to define the problem we're trying to solve. It's not resurrect a broken program. It's literally incrementally improve by a game, 2 games. Like, I mean, we were right on the edge there of being an Omaha team, and it's baseball. That's how it goes. You make one bad pitch, and it can be your season in the postseason. There's no margin for error. In the last couple of years, I mean, we've been right there. Jazz pointed this out when we were at the elimination game against Texas, but they called a hit and run, and Yo-Yo took one false step towards third before seeing where the ball was. That's an easy double play, and we get out of that big inning they had and win that game. But he didn't. And last year, I mean, Walters, of all people, blew a save when we got eliminated. Like, after Patelli, of all people, made an error. Like, this stuff, you can't coach out of it. This stuff just happens sometimes, and that's baseball. And that's why, like Jazz mentioned, you see every major program has flops in the postseason on their resume. Every great coach does, too. Because it's baseball. It happens. It's not meant to be played in like a 1 or 2 game situation, but you're obviously not going to have like a 40-game postseason. You're going to have to do it that way. Same thing happens in the majors. Teams win 100-plus games and then lose in the first round of the playoffs because that's not the same sport you play in the regular season. So all we can really ask of the program is to continuously put yourselves in those positions, and it'll even out. And you can go back to Jim Morris's tenure. Obviously, the last 2 years were bad. 2 years before that, they were in the College World Series. Right before that was a series of regional failures that look an awful lot like what JD's did. And there was no indication that, they're going to be in Omaha the next 2 years based off of just that. But that's baseball. It's kind of a play here or there, and you just have to put your best foot forward. And I've yet to hear anyone articulate how you know for sure you're going to make that jump from that 5 to 10 range to the 1 to 5 range, where you're definitely going to get into the supers and into Omaha. Because even then, like you mentioned, Vanderbilt was a top 5 national seed. They went out in their regional too. This
Well,
is
let's talk about
this is
this
the way
for a second.
baseball is.
Well, let's talk about this for a second when it comes to the coaching, the coaches that they did look at, right? So, one being right, one of the biggest names out there. Excuse me, sorry guys. Is Coach Pollard over at Duke, right? And everybody was kind of clamoring for him. Oh my God, it's the Duke guy. Look what Duke did. That's great. Guess who was better than Duke this year? Miami was better than Duke this year.
Won 3 out of 4 against them. Finished ahead of them in the Coastal. Got a higher seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah,
but again, you know what? Duke's a great example of how you gotta get luck to go your way sometimes.
Absolutely.
They got out of the regional because Coastal Carolina lost the opener to Ryder, and Ryder did the dirty work for Duke, and Duke just had to win one of 2.
That's the way baseball is.
Yeah,
right?
That's the way. And we've had several of those. If you look at some of our teams that made it to Omaha, like one year we played VCU in the Super Regionals. Like, how do you get that kind of a break?
Right.
you're playing a 4 seed, won the other regional. Like, oh, this is like free pass to Omaha, and then and other times,
the other time, look,
other times your 2 seed is Texas that won the Big 12 regular season. It has 2 really good pitchers, and then all of a sudden you're in the losers bracket.
I mean,
those are the breaks. Those are the breaks.
Let's talk about last year when everybody's complaining about how bad our pitching was or how bad our pitching has been. Last year, we didn't lose the regionals because of our pitching. Our pitching was actually dominant in the regionals. We did well in pitching in regionals. Well, we could do the bats just went silent. So then you're talking about another coach and what's his name? Walter. I forgot his first name. Tom Walters, I believe his name is. The head coach at Wake Forest, who he had the number 1 team in the country this year. He had potentially the best rotation in baseball as well. And then you got all those guys that most of them are going to get drafted. And it took him 10 years to get there. It took him 10 years to get to Omaha, right? That team, Wake Forest, hasn't been to Omaha since 1955. And we're talking about bringing in that. And I love that guy. He's a great coach. And so is Mascara, right? Their pitching coach. Really good coaches. Well, we're talking about those guys being able to bring us back to Omaha before a guy like JD, who's been to Omaha 6 times with us, right? Who's been around the program for 21 years, understands how it is to coach in Miami, and has built these relationships for over 20 years in South Florida and throughout the country, and has recruited at an elite level for 20 years as well. And you're telling me that those guys, sight unseen, blindly, you're going to tell me that those guys are going to take you to Omaha as opposed to JD because of this fresh new starts,
and it's not that either any of the guys you mentioned.
No, Coach Pollard did not pass, by the way. He did not pass on this opportunity. Just so you know, that I know you guys follow what Mike Ryan says, but Mike Ryan actually went back and said that Coach Pollard did not pass up on this opportunity to stay at Duke. So just to kind of correct that. Go ahead.
I think it was pretty clear from the way that his timeline transpired that he Al Golden the situation, which is he used it for a contract extension. And I don't think we ever really offered it. I think we heard the first weekend that when he interviewed, it didn't necessarily go well. But I think he kind of used that. Miami's interested to get concessions he wanted at Duke. But overall, it's not to say that any of these coaches would not have necessarily been better than JD. It's not like, if we got Wake's head coach, or we got Duke's head coach, or we got Paul Minari or whatever, that would not have been better. But it's not obviously better. And the reaction we're getting from the fan base is that,
right.
How could you possibly hire the dude who's been very successful here in a program that's in the top 10 instead of Duke's coach? And it's just like, you can make an argument for, Duke's coach, we have better facilities, we have more talent, so he'll be able to take that next step. He's already got a head coach. You can make an argument for him, but it's not a slam dunk case. I could just as easily make an argument for JD Arteaga over him, and I don't understand the reaction here. Like, oh my God, we missed out on, I didn't know this guy's name last week, but then I saw him rumored. I mean, I feel like there's too much of that happening. Go ahead, Max.
No, I agree. I think people just fall in love with a new name and then they just kind of go for it. Like, for example, I have some friends that when Paul Minari's name came up, they were super, super excited. And then 2 days later, they're just like, it would be almost just as bad as JT Arteaga if we hired him. I'm like, well, 2 days ago, I mean, it's ridiculous that it's just reacting with emotions instead of actually thinking about the situation. Like I was a big fan of Paul getting some traction because he has won a World Series. Um, you know,
He's a local guy.
he is a local guy, but the 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 fallback is he's old and he hasn't won since 2009. So but I understood that, and I was willing to kind of, I guess, take that risk per se. But yeah, everyone's acting like the program should be like folded, and this is the worst hire. This is like just an abomination of the program. I don't feel that way. I just, like I said, I want to see results at this point. I want to see us back at a minimum back to hosting regional, because that's where I think our team should be every single year.
And it's where we have been the last couple of years. And I think that's the part of this I'm struggling. And not just hosting. I mean, we were a national seed 2 years ago. We were one spot off of it this year. We're hanging around where you get top 8. That is your goal every season. We've been 9 and 6 the last 2 years. So I'm not really seeing it. I get it that we have not been to Omaha, and Gino DiMaria left the job unfinished, right? I think we can pretty much say that unequivocally, because these results do matter, and losing in home regionals matters. It's not that it doesn't matter. But there's a far cry from that than from like squeaking into the tournament as a 3 seed and getting bounced and barely making it and all. Like, we are nearly there, and it's so tight at these margins. In fact, before yesterday's UF demolition at LSU, I think like 80% of the games in Omaha this year were 1-run games. Like, this sport has gotten so tight now.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to show up, play all of your games at home like we used to. We used to play like one road series against FSU every year, and that was it. And then every other year against UF. Like, we're not going to be able to do that and then just like get to host and just kill everyone. Like, these games are tight, which means you're going to flop sometimes in the postseason. And I think, I think frankly they're getting painted a lot with the football brush, which has been genuinely atrocious for the large part of the last 20 years. Baseball has not been. And it's not right now. Like, if the football team was as good as the baseball team last 5 years, we'd all be like popping champagne and enjoying like going to the Orange Bowl and stuff. Because that's the level.
We'd have the #1 recruiting class in the country, just
right,
like we do in baseball.
There you go. And also, like, you got to understand, like, finishing 9th, finishing 6th, these are like, in football, this is the equivalent of like, oh, we just missed the playoffs. Instead, we're going to the Rose Bowl. That's what they're saying is like a dumpster fire on the baseball side of things. And it's unfortunate, but that is, as our intro says, and Jazz continues to talk on mute so I can keep talking. As our intro says, what's wrong with us? We're Miami fans. So
yeah. And I kind of want to address what Kane's cat says.
Well, I mean, I think he's been teeing us up for some great transitions here. And he talked about like the recruiting, which is, I know, the kind of the next topic we want to get into. So.
Well, I kind of wanted to get into. Actually, I'm sure some of you have seen this already, but just to give you an idea as to the resume that the guy that nobody wants has, and then now is the head coach at UM. All right. So you have 46 draft picks. We're only talking about pitchers, by the way. He had 46 draft picks in his 21-year career as a pitching coach. 22 NCAA tournament appearances. He's had 19 All-ACC honorees. He's had 12 All-Americans. He's had 12 freshman All-Americans. And he's had 10 College World Series appearances. I mean, if you take JD's face out of there and you put Pollard's, or you put Tom Walters, or you put Vish's face on there, you say, I mean, shit, this is the guy we want. This is the guy we want. As far as Gino leaving like a coward, I think that's incorrect. If you ask me, it's kind of harsh to say.
I think it's really harsh, and again, he lost Paul in the middle of the year, and I think that weighed heavily on his decision to just, frankly, stuff like that puts your life in perspective. This is a man who's been to Omaha a million times as an assistant. He's won rings. And I think he's saying, like, do I really want to grind on this anymore? Or do I want to spend more time with my family? Because when you lose close family members, it does put those things in perspective. All of a sudden, this other stuff isn't as important. I think that weighed heavily into his decision, which I think we can all unequivocally say now was, we were speculating at the time to get forced out. Was it It is pretty clear by the way the search went that there was no plan to replace him that they went and executed on. This was definitely a long, winding search to essentially end up back where they started. But like this was clearly not something where they're like, let's force him out because we got these dominoes that are going to fall. And I think he made what was the decision in his best interest to I think legitimately just spend more time with his family. He's been doing this a long time.
Maybe take over the company that needs somebody to run
Yeah,
it now.
Maybe
a
could be
multi-million-dollar business that they have.
yeah, could be part of it as well. But no, I think if you got to understand these guys don't have personal lives, right? I mean, this is what they do all the time. This job doesn't stop, and I think he wanted it to stop, to be honest, and that weighed into it a lot. So I don't think he was forced out, and I don't think he copped out by trying to like, oh, I can't do it, I'm quitting. I think he had to look at his own situation, and you look at how long he's been doing this. I think he's just like, I don't want to do this anymore, and I'd rather spend more time with my family. And actually, you see three around the ballpark, right? We'll see Gino hanging around the ballpark too, like going as a fan. It's much more enjoyable than dealing with all this stuff, and I think he's going to kind of enjoy his retirement in that sense.
I agree. I didn't know if you had anything that you wanted to kind of say there, Max,
No, I'm good.
because you did mention about us having the one of the top recruiting classes in the country again this year.
Well, let's talk through this because Canes Cats Heat 305. Wow, hit everything there. It's kind of got another has set. I would say good points on this. So I guess one of the things that's been a problem for this school is we get these guys that get drafted and they never end up on campus. I'll start getting some question asking here. How susceptible? I know Jazz has been doing some deep diving on recruiting today and our history of it as well. But how are we looking in this regard? How susceptible is this? We do have the number one class right now. Is this to getting like poached and taken down several notches?
Yeah. So just to give you an idea, so some of the guys, I know someone mentioned Elijah Green earlier, who more than likely will not step foot on.
No, he already. That was last year.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know why I thought that he was this year. I was looking at the wrong draft class. But I know there's some guys that are local actually that will get drafted, that might not step foot here. But I do also know from a recruiting perspective, there are some local coaches that I do know a little bit, and in speaking with some of the guys that I've had some conversations with recently, the last couple of weeks. It's been kind of wait and don't go anywhere, don't make any moves. This is going to be the right hire for Miami. We want you guys to stay. So based off of what I've been hearing, a lot of those kids still want to come and play, even if they get drafted. I think it's going to be hard to keep a first round pick away, right? You got the kid over at Doral, who is potentially a high draft pick. You got a couple other kids who.
They also, I mean, the MLB teams do their homework. They're not going to take someone in the first round if they think there's any chance. They know already they're going to sign them otherwise, like you'll have the most talented players slip if they think they're not going to sign them. So anyone going in the first round, they already kind of know they're going to be able to sign.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly, I have to do a little more homework on all the kids that are committed, because I don't know them all really well, but I do know that. Look, the truth is that. Whoa, Jordan, that's a ton of bullshit. But okay, the truth of the matter
Wake
is,
Forest this year.
Yeah, just a few weeks ago, actually, it is mind blowing how 2 losses to Texas just erase an entire season. We beat them in the ACC tournament, like literally like the weekend before the postseason started.
Miami recruits well. Miami recruits obviously yes, of course. The problem is, and we've spoken about this before, Vish. They over recruit sometimes, right? They recruit too well, and so you get the top recruiting class in the country, and then 3 or 4 of those kids end up getting drafted, and now you're screwed, right? You like the Carlos Correas of the world. And I can go on and on and on. The trick is to maybe get the right amount of first-round picks and 3-star, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to kind of give them star rankings or anything like that, but the right amount of in between where you can keep them home, keep them here, and develop them into what some of these teams like Florida and LSU and Vanderbilt do, right? I mean, look at a guy like a perfect example is a guy like Jack Caglione. I mean, how did that kid not get drafted? Or how did that kid not go? And now he's doing what he. Fortunately, he got lit up today, but
7-2 now.
Yep, I just saw it right now.
Players.
Yeah. That's a tough one, man. That's a tough one. Anyways, things like that. It's tough to always hit. And if we're gonna do that, and I got the recruiting rankings from Perfect Game, I know they're gonna be a little bit different than D1 or any of the other ones. And I went back 10 years. But right now, if you look at the 2023 class, they're in the top 10. 2022, they were, in Perfect Game, they were like 19th. I don't know if that makes any sense. But in 2021, they were 10th. In 2020, they had the number 3 class in the country. In 2017, the year that I think it was the year that after we went to Omaha, we had the number 4 team in the country. Going all the way back to 2013, we had the number 2 ranked class, and we had in 2014 we had the number 1 ranked class. And put it this way, teams like UF, LSU, number 1, 14, 3, 24, 6, 68 LSU had in 2015. They had the 68th ranked class by Perfect Game. We had the 89th ranked class in 2015, which I think was just because we had so many guys get drafted. By the way, out of that class, you had guys that went to Omaha. So it's all over the place. I mean, LSU and UF had 10-7, 2-16, 11-3, 6-8, 13-2, 1-4, 21-1. Where's Miami with all that? Miami's right in there. Miami's right in there battling with these teams every single year. The Vanderbilts of the world. What happened to Vanderbilt this year? National seed. They got dumped out in the regionals. So when you're talking about a team that's not recruiting well, I think that you need to look at the number. Oh, and they just hit a 2-run bomb. So now it's 9-2.
Yes, they did.
9-2, baby.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers. So when it comes to recruiting, Miami does it with the best of them. And guess who's been the recruiting coordinator for most of that time? It's been J.D. Arteaga. So we kind of need to take a step back and understand that as far as him building relationships, he's already built those relationships with the best programs in South Florida, the best programs in Florida, period. So now he's going to have to expand. He's going to have to bring in some guys here on staff that are going to be able to do that work as well as recruiting coordinators, pitching coach. And I know the names that have been mentioned, like Laz as a pitching coach, who's a former Hurricane, pitched for the Red Sox, scouted as well. Also coached at my alma mater when they were ranked in the country in Division II baseball at Barry University as well. Coach a guy like Jan Gomes. They were, I think, ranked number 2 in the country at one point. He was there as a pitching coach there. They had one of the best pitching staffs in the country at Division II baseball. If anybody knows about Division II baseball, it's pretty loaded as well. So it's not, that much different. Neither is JUCO. And I know I say this all the time, and I feel like a broken damn record about how baseball is. Baseball is a different animal. This is not like North Dakota State and Alabama, right? Either Alabama's going to kick their ass 10 times out of 10, more than likely. And North Dakota State has won 17 national titles in the last 18 years or some stupid thing like that in Division II. The point is, baseball is tough, man, and it's tough to recruit. And at the same time, it's tough to recruit. There's so many really good baseball players out there. You just have to be able to get hot, all right, play good baseball down the line in the postseason, and get to Omaha. And it's easier said than done. And Miami's been able to do it as good, or if not better, than anybody in the country in the last 20 years. So when we sit here and we talk about this being a terrible hire of a guy who's been part of that for the last 20 years, I just think that's, if you ask me what's lazy, that's lazy. What's lazy is to call this a lazy hire and not really look at the numbers and look at the results and look at the success that JD has had here, and not think that he could be successful. And again, it's not to say that Walter or Pollard or Maneri or any of these other guys that have been looked at or been interviewed for this position couldn't come in and be successful as well. But as you mentioned, Vish, can you sit here and say unequivocally that they're better, that they're going to be more successful than JD? I don't think you can do that.
Yeah, and I think that's the crux of it. So I don't think we're saying it's hunky dory. That is probably the last phrase you'll see come out in Miami, but we'll go with it. I think what we're saying is it's not as bad as people are making out to be, and it's totally reasonable to argue that, given the improvements made since 2017, 2018, that that this program is headed in the right direction, and it needs to take that next step. And it's totally reasonable to say an assistant coach off of the staff that helped recover it to that place can take it that next step. So again, this might fail, but it's not set to fail. And I think it, just like the other names that were mentioned, we're not guaranteed to succeed. So I think it's kind of, I mean, fans are fans. We're gonna overreact one way or another, but I would say the I want something different crew is upset. But I think, like you said, as we look into it deeper, there are reasons to be optimistic about this hire. And I'm gonna bring in our colleague Blue here, who is backstage.
Bring him in because, instead of looking at the last 20 years, let's look at the last 10. Okay, so let's look at the last 10. Let's just look at these last two. What's up, Blue? We'll get to you in a second. But let's look at these last 10 years just from a pitching perspective. How about that? So the ERA this year has probably been the worst ERA for the pitching staff, and they were the what was it, 9th seed? The 9th or the 10th seed regionally? What was it? They were 9. I'm sorry. They were number 9. They were the 9th seed, and they hosted a regional this year, with obvious issues on the staff with injuries and guys that went down early. Then last year, they were the 6th, right? They were the number 6 national seed, and their ERA was at a 4.52. Okay, and they still made the national seed in number 6. Let's talk about 6 years ago when they went to Omaha. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. ERA was at a 3.72 ERA. The WHIP was 1.33, and batting average against the hitters 2.39. So you're talking about a really good team went to Omaha there. You're talking about the year that the COVID year, the ERA was at 2.8. Is a 2.8. Obviously, it's a small sample size. It was like 20 games or something. But we're talking about potentially that being the year, right? And they obviously got cut short because of COVID. Okay, so yeah, so the ERA has been a little bit high the last couple of years. And we've also struggled with having issues with injuries and guys, not coming out and performing. You had Rosario, who obviously we wanted to be more than what he is, and some other guys that have transferred out or have left, or some new guys that have come in. It's been a little crazy the last couple of years. But if you're going to go back the last 8 years, the last 8 to 10 years pitching staff-wise, I mean, you're talking about mid-3s ERA. So that's some of the best in the country. If you look at teams like LSU and Florida, I think their ERAs are in the 3s or 4s also. So, I mean, Texas, who won the Big 12 and kicked their ass, their ERA was a 5.75, I think, from a team perspective.
Right, and they're a great example of how fickle the postseason is. The one thing they had was 2 really good starters.
Yeah,
and they rode that through our regional. That's not good enough to beat Stanford, though. And so I think that's kind of that's a great example of how some teams are set up depending on format. Like I feel like if we had gotten into a situation where we were in a 3-game series, we were much better set up for that than we were for playing out of regionals. And we actually talked about that before. It was like, we cannot lose. We are not set up to play well in regionals with our pitching this year. And
absolutely.
And I think that showed up, and that's the sport though. And to your point, like I will say to JD's credit, and we can also apportion some of the blame in terms of some of the arm talent that's been here. I saw a comment earlier, I believe it was from Canes Cats Heat, about how several of our freshman pitchers transferred. I mean, we had this conversation in the middle of the year, like, how did these guys get on scholarship? Like, seriously, some of them had no stuff. I'm like, how is this guy a Miami pitcher?
By the way, no other pitching coach did what he's been able to do with his players since 1991. They didn't have a guy drafted in the first round. We're talking about Alex Santos and David Gills and Daryl Duque and Mike News and Robbie Morrison, all these guys. None of these guys went in the first round. Those are national championship pitchers. But JD was able to do it with some of the other guys. So, it's a testament to what,
Yeah, and I think that the question though, and I'll throw this out to the group, is what why can't we get, like, I mean, Rosario's a different story because he's he should be better. He's definitely got the arm talent. You watch the kid throw and you're like, how's your ERA not in like the in the low ones, and how are you not striking out 15 guys a game? Instead you're getting smashed. But other than him, I mean, if you look at even, I know Gino took a lot of heat for not holding Zeal back. I mean, let's be real. He was never really an ace. His ERA was in the high fours.
And to be honest, Ligon might not be an ace.
Yeah, Ligon's probably not either based on stuff. So, like, how do we address? That's the question I want to ask. How do we get the top end arm talent? Because I think Walters is there, and frankly, Rosario is there on the team. They're the only guys that you would look at on physical ability, where like those are top end guys. Everyone else is kind of piece it together. Not that they're bad, but they don't have that like top end. Like these are.
Well, I think you might have gotten that in a guy like Crowther or Kaba.
Okay, the two guys that got injured.
Yeah, Tommy John before the season even started. Yeah. So, it's not something you can plan for, right? Brian Walter was another kid that could have potentially, had a significant role, and he had Tommy John after the first pitch that he threw, basically. So,
so kind of looking ahead though to this year as well, though. Then, so and again, this is for the whole
you're gonna have to rely on some of these young arms, or
well, this is for the whole group because Andrew Walter's obviously gone. I think People can technically come back, but there's no way. I feel like they're going to look at his velocity like, I can fix this, and he's going to get drafted high. I mean, how can you not when he's hit like mid to high 90s consistently? So Jake, I feel like we're going to have to kind of reset a little bit here.
Jake, and by the way, it's no knock on you. A lot of people are not happy with the hire. We totally get it, man.
I'll also say, Jake, I know him from Twitter. He's awesome. So we're kind of. So I know he's Navy Kane if you follow on Twitter. So yeah, no, he's a friend of the shows, and this is definitely not a knock on him in terms of
no, not at all, man. Giving our point of view on it. Blue, talk to us, brother. How do you feel about bringing JD back as a head coach for Canes baseball? By the way, if nobody knows this on the chat, and this is not a knock either, Blue might know more about baseball than he even knows about football. Don't get it twisted. Talk to him, Blue.
What about 1972 wrestling?
Don't get him started. Oh man.
Personally, I think it's a good hire. Coach Hoffman and his head coach, we talked about this today, and he just figures this guy's a battler. He knows what he's doing. He's well respected in the community. And like you said, the only thing is he's going to have to hire somebody almost like him to do what he did, because he has to concentrate on everything else. And, I know that a buddy of mine, Joe, they wanted Cora, they wanted this guy, but, you had to kind of keep it close in house because of the fact that, as you guys just mentioned, if you start losing guys, you're going to have to start from the beginning. Why would you need to do that when you bring in somebody and you promote him? If he doesn't work out after a couple of years, then you make a decision. But I think he's going to do well. There's not going to be a whole lot of changes. He's going to do the same thing that, put them in, being a regional host the last 2 years. I think it's a good hire. And like I said, nobody knows him like Coach Hoffman, who had him in high school. And he just felt that he said that his personality is like how he pitched. He's a battler. He doesn't give in. He's going to do everything he possibly can to make the team much better. And I think the high school coaches locally respect him a lot. They really do. They know him. And you got to remember all those times that he, when they were on recruiting visits, he's the one that set them all up. So he knows all the high school coaches real well throughout the entire state. And, the only difference, and as you mentioned, Miami always has guys. And, you look at the dilemma that programs like LSU and Florida are having is what you just mentioned, Jazz. You're going to recruit these kids, but they're going to be drafted. And they're going to be drafted in the first couple of rounds, and they're gone. See, in Miami used to be Miami's problem. The Miami would get guys who were first, second, or third round picks, and the money that that major league teams were offering them. But it's not that way with Miami now. They get good kids, but they don't get, with the exception of a kid that throws 90 or a kid, who could hit for power. Most of their draft picks are in the middle rounds. I think, I was looking the other day at some of the guys, and, This is the thing about Miami. They have to hold on to the guys. Obviously, and it's not just Miami. Nowadays you're going to see times change. And you brought up, what Jack's doing at Florida, and how he wasn't the, guy was the most sought after. He developed, and obviously he's one of the best players in the country. He plays, he's like Otani. He throws. Although tonight he didn't very well, but
Yay!
yeah, well, that's, what? I think LSU got stung a little bit, had about 18 hours to think about giving up a football score. And then, and plus you have one of the best pitchers in the, that they have on their staffs. But getting back to what I think Arteaga, I mean, people could say what they want. No, he shouldn't be here, but he is here. So now let's move on to that next step. Now that he's here, let's see he's got to make a couple of hires, that are going to help him. And, and as well as I do from football, guys, you're only as good as your coaching staff. So he's got to make some good hires here. That's going to help elevate it. But do you want to ask me? I think it's a very good hire. I really do. I think he's an in-house dude. He's a guy who played there, much like his predecessor. And I just think his pride level, just like Mario Cristobal, is at a high peak. And I say, let's give him a chance. Let's not knock him around before he ever gets an opportunity to do what he's going to do. And, I remember 2 years ago a couple years ago when they brought in Damari, and he goes, "Oh my God, you're making a mistake. He's this, he's that." All he did was win 260 games. I mean,
Yeah,
he won every year,
And
and
I think the other point you brought on, which we forget, we think it's easy to get where the program is finishing in the top 10.
it's not.
There's a very good chance you bring in the guy to shake things up, and the shakeup involves the bottom dropping out at the very least initially. I mean, look at what happened at FSU. It's a perfect example of that. They hired a coach that had a lot of success in this conference that was an alum, immediately became the worst team in the ACC. Immediately. I mean, do people want to go through that? We'll see where they end up. I mean, FSU's on a longer term plan. They were not nearly in as good shape as Damari has left this program. So it would be very hard to be that bad here, regardless of who you hired. But that's the risk you run because they had a Martin in charge for decades, and they got him out because we're going to try something new and shake things up. And you take this consistency for granted, and consistently putting teams in regionals and into the top 10, you can take that for granted at your own risk. You get in a guy like Parlad, who has missed the NCAA tournament multiple times at Duke.
Right.
Because they're Duke, you're kind of like, it's fine, it's Duke. That's not fine here, right? So I think there is a lot to be said for maintaining some continuity with the program that's finishing in the top 10 repeatedly, and seeing if maybe, as Blue said, make some smarter hires here, get some fresh ideas on the assistant level is a good way to push this forward.
I think understanding that process is what's most important as well when you come to look at it, because like you mentioned, Dish, like at those other schools, if you miss the tournament, well, okay, you missed the tournament, no big deal. If Walter misses the tournament next year, yeah, it's kind of disappointing that he was so good this year, but whatever. Miami misses a tournament, you're talking about, whoa, this is not something that happens very often. What the hell is going on? And if you don't have a coach on staff that understands that and understands how to navigate that, like a guy like JD, then you're going to run across a lot of issues. I wanted to ask Max something, because you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but kind of another part to this whole thing was, a lot of people mentioning, well, they're not getting all these other coaches to commit or to sign or to interview because of NIL and the money with NIL and the money with this, that, and the other. Please, Max, can we talk to these fans and let them know that the NIL, I don't want to say it has nothing to do with it, but the NIL is really not as significant as you're talking about when you're talking football.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
it's not gonna make or break whether a prestigious coach signs here.
yeah, baseball NIL is like very minuscule compared to football. I mean, you're talking a couple $100 a month compared to a couple $1,000 a month. So they're not even on the same level. like close to being on the same level. So I don't think it was that big of a deal. You know, we do have a lot more of an allotment, I would assume, for football than we do for baseball, but that's just the norm around the sport. You have outliers like LSU, for example. They make a lot more money in NIL than most schools do, but they're also a perennial powerhouse that is, you know, just they have. I don't know. It's just it's a little bit different of a situation, I feel, with LSU. Like they've had more recent success, so they're kind of willing to put more into that. But as a whole, there's only a few schools. Like I would probably say Vanderbilt's probably up there with NIL too, that are doing that. And you know, people have said, well, you know, Ruiz and his family all come from a baseball lineage. You would think that he would maybe put some more money into the baseball program. Yeah, you may say or think that and whatnot, but we'll see what happens. I think that they're fans of this hire, so we'll see if we start to dump some more money into that as well.
I mean, the Reeses have dumped a ton of money into the baseball program. It's just You're on mute again, Jess, but it was not directly gone to Life Wallet from Life Wallet, I guess, is NIL, but it is they've heavily. If you look around the facilities, they've all been upgraded recently, and a lot of that money came from the Reeses.
Absolutely. Before we finish here, I know that a lot of questions are going to be who are they going to bring in, you know, as the assistant coaches, as Blue mentioned, that's going to be really important. And obviously there's been some names out there already. Adrian Morales, who's the head coach at Miami-Dade, and also Laz Gutierrez, who's a former Hurricane, former Major League player, pitching coach, head coach at Nova Southeastern right now, who's a really good Division II baseball program as well. So you've got some guys out there. I know everybody talks about Greg Lovelady coming in some capacity as well. So that's another option. But you're also going to have to think that this is a different game now. And analysts and all that are going to be a big part as well. So you're probably going to hear a lot of names when it comes to something like that also. So be on the lookout for that. We'll obviously have some more. We'll do a recruiting show on college baseball. And
there's quite a few things we're gonna, you know, we when the season ended, we're like, we'll see you at the end of fall ball. And then all hell is broken loose. But yeah, we got recruiting, we got assistant coach hires, we got to see which of our kids get drafted, who goes, who stays. There's all sorts of stuff.
Transfer portal news, all that good stuff.
Yep,
that'll be on. Stick around. We've got Six Ring Canes football coming up now in just a couple of minutes. Max, thank you so much for coming on and talking some baseball with us, my friend. Appreciate it. I know you're a little under the weather like me. I sound terrible. So I hope you feel better, brother. And always thanks for coming on. Appreciate it, man.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
The Six Ring Cane Show. Yeah. The Six Ring Cane Show. Yeah. The Six Rings Cane Show. You know.